It was really more of just a intense craving and just like overwhelming to a point though where it was like I felt like a drug addict where I was like I just gotta have just a little bit.
Hi, I'm Rodney.
I'm Alexis,
And
and
this
this
is
is
the
the
Vegan
Vegan
Agenda.
Agenda. In response to the Why I Am No Longer Vegan videos that have been trending, we've decided to make a collection of interviews with everyday vegans who have made an ethical connection and have chosen not to use animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose.
Veganism is not just a diet, it's a lifestyle based on an intention to minimize the suffering and exploitation of animals.
If you find this video informative, interesting, enjoyable, or helpful, please like, subscribe, and share.
My name is Dani and I live here in Austin. I've been vegan for about 3.5 years, and there was a year before that where I was moving from a vegetarian diet to vegan, and I was vegetarian for like 10 years before that. It was kind of a very shallow reasoning. um, and I didn't think uh, more into it as far as other animal products hurting animals. I was very I deluded myself into thinking that they didn't get hurt when it came to getting their dairy and eggs. For most of that time that I spent as a vegetarian, I didn't know anything about veganism. That didn't really come up in that time, and I certainly didn't know any vegans, and so that was something that didn't really cross my mind. It wasn't until much later into it when and I don't even know how it happened, but somehow I started thinking about it more, and just the more time I spent online and with I guess the advent of Facebook and all that, I started being exposed to more of that. And somehow I started seeing those things, seeing those images and those videos of the dairy industry and the egg industry. And at first I had that knee-jerk reaction where I was like, that can't be true. There's no way that they're actually doing that just to get some milk. That's ridiculous. The horrible conditions that the animals were kept in and just the way that the cows were screaming, and it was just horrible. And then of course, the slaughtering of the calves, that was something I didn't think about as a vegetarian who ate a ton of cheese all the time. I never even thought about that, and I never even thought about the basic way that we have to get dairy, the fact that the cow has to be pregnant first and you have to take away the baby so that they don't take our milk. And that just wasn't something I thought about, and no one talked about it because it's horrific. I don't think people want to know, and I know that was true for me. That was something that it crossed my mind here and there when I would be thinking about it, and I would think to myself, oh, cheese isn't a vegetable. Why would that be considered vegetarian? Oh well, and then I would just continue on my merry way and just keep, well, yeah. And so I just smashed that down. I didn't research any deeper into it myself, and no one around me was talking about it. And but as I started finding stuff out, I started realizing that's why, because it's really, really terrible. I was definitely addicted to cheese. That was hard to do at first, but once I got it out of my system, and the more I thought about the real victims of the dairy industry, there's no way. It makes it really, really gross, and the smell and the sight of it makes me sick now, and there's no way that I could go back. At first I did. That was kind of how I got over that initial hump. Is I just bought all the Daya. That's what was available at the time back then, and I would buy that all the time and just only eat that when I had that cheese craving. And back then it wasn't the same. It uh, didn't quite hit that craving, but I kind of thought that that would help. Maybe if I could just associate that, then it would like eliminate that craving, and eventually it did. And yeah, I got to a point where I really don't need that. I don't feel like I need to have a cheese alternative to like make my meal complete. I can take it or leave it. I eat such a varied diet, way more so than I ever have in my life. And so I rotate a lot of different things. I eat a lot of different stuff, but I think the stuff that I eat the most, I eat a lot of rice and beans because very versatile, very filling, and you can do anything with them. It all depends on how you cook it, how you season it. It's as expensive as you want to make it. I mean, as long as you're sticking to like what I do, I stick to buying in bulk whenever I can, and lots of grains and legumes and beans. Those things are the cheapest foods in the world. And I buy a lot of frozen fruits and veggies. That's very inexpensive, and in season fruits. and I really only buy the meat and cheese substitutes when they're on sale. And yeah, that keeps the expenses down a lot. Veganism is really it's really inspired me to be more creative with foods and to branch out and to try new things that I've never heard of, and I'm still finding things that I've never heard of before, and thinking I'll try it. Sometimes I just make stuff up. Sometimes I'll just look at what I've got in the fridge, look at what's in the pantry, and just kind of throw stuff together, and it comes out amazing. It usually blows my mind. It's mostly for me, but we share stuff in the household. Everybody's kind of responsible for their own stuff, but we do share. It's an all-vegan household. Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. But finally, yeah, this is it's something I'd always wished. I'd always wished I could live with other vegans. It kind of put me in a little bit of a bubble, actually, because whenever I do go to houses that do have meat and other animal products, it's very jarring, and it kind of brings me back to the sad reality. And that gets hard to deal with sometimes, yeah. Whenever I have to visit my dad, he tries, but he's, I've tried to tell him too. He's got lots of health issues, and I try to tell him a lot of that would be solved if you would just change the way that you eat. And yeah, he seems kind of open to it, but he's just not really making those changes, and so it gets difficult. He's the one that likes to cook. He's always been that way. Ever since my childhood, he's always been the grill master, and that's so he likes to cook his own food and to grill, and it's always meat and dairy heavy things. So it's usually whenever he invites me and my brothers over, he's already cooking something, and it's big old slab of meat. I usually, or I'll eat beforehand and then go over for a little bit and then peace out. I try to focus more on well, it's not about that, it's about being here with family, and I try to make it about that, but it's always there in the back of my head, where I'm just this is so horrible, I don't want to be here, it smells so bad. I see a dead body, I see body parts on plates, and then people putting them into their mouths and putting them into their children's mouths. It's very disturbing. My dad's always been that guy. He's always been that griller guy. And yeah, he has always loved to barbecue, and I remember that being a struggle when I was a kid. Because he would make that stuff, and then my parents, just trying to be good parents, are thinking she has to eat this, and trying to get me to eat whatever it is they're making, and a lot of it would be that, and I just was not having it. I was just grossed out, and I couldn't say why exactly. I was very young, and I just didn't like it. I really had a big aversion to most meat. I really just didn't like to eat it, and fortunately for me, my parents didn't really force it on me. They would try to get me to eat it, and then they'd be like, oh, well, whatever, she's not gonna eat it, and they wouldn't force it on me. They weren't they weren't super strict like that. Really grateful that my parents were not like that. They didn't force that on me. And then when I got to be about I thought I was 13, but my dad told me that I was about 12 when I decided that I wanted to be a vegetarian, and they said okay. They asked some doctors, which miraculously said sure. For it surprised me looking back when they told me that story. When they said that they did ask a doctor, and the doctor said, well, as long as she's eating right and getting all her nutrients, and that should be fine. And that's what let them say, okay, we'll allow that. I hear all the time, and I see it a lot, that a lot of doctors aren't okay with that, and they seem to be misinformed, and to think that we need to eat certain things, and a lot of doctors do kind of freak out about that, and they say, oh no, you can't do that. I've heard that they don't get a lot of nutritional training. Little to none is what I hear a lot, and so I think I want to say that it's mostly that. I hope that it's just ignorance, and that they just don't know any better. They haven't been taught. I'm not deprived in any sort of way. I would never describe myself as that. It might have felt that way at first, starting out when I too was ignorant about it, and when I first started thinking about it, and I thought, I'm going to be so deprived, I'll never be able to eat, X again, and just not knowing any better, and not knowing that I would be so much better off without those things. It's extremely rare that I even come down with a little cold. I feel like I'm the healthiest I've ever been, and that's why I always get told, where do you get your protein? The favorite question of all vegans. And that's my favorite responses. Like, well, where do you think cows get their protein? Where do cows get all their vitamins? Or better yet, elephants and giraffes and gorillas. Where do they get all their
The
protein?
strongest animals on the planet
The biggest, strongest.
are
They're
herbivores.
herbivores. I noticed a lot of physical improvements almost right away, and it kind of snuck up on me too. My skin cleared up drastically. I'd been diagnosed with psoriasis like over 10 years ago. And at the time, they said, well, that's it. That's just a thing that you're going to have forever. It's an autoimmune disease. There's no cure for it. Here's some steroid cream to rub on your skin. Don't get it in don't get it in any orifices. And like that was it. And there's big old warning label and it says, warning, this is a steroid cream. And it would work, but as soon as you stopped using it, it didn't work anymore. And of course, they never once mentioned, well, you could try fixing your diet a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That never even came up. After I cut out dairy out of my life, that drastically improved. And it wasn't, I didn't do it for that. I did it for the animals. So I wasn't even thinking about that. I had given up on medicines. I was like, these medicines aren't working. So I just quit using them. And years later, and fast forward to years later, and I'm vegan now. And then one day I just remember looking at my skin and I was like, didn't I used to have like a giant rash going all the way down here? And I'm like, it's gone now. And I would look around and I would say, oh yeah, like there's like a patch of like lighter skin where it's just gone now, that it used to be covered in these in these sores, and it's just gone. And I just remember being like, what happened? Like I'm not using that horrible steroid cream anymore. What changed? And I'm like, could it be that simple? Could it really be that simple? Like, just stop eating this thing and you're cured? And apparently so. It's definitely still about the animals for sure, but I've added in more reasons to stay vegan, and that would be for the health of the planet, number one, to stop or help stem global warming, and to help the people of the planet too, because animal agriculture is eating up all of our resources, and it takes so much more food to feed animals and then to kill them to feed fewer people, when we could just be feeding all of these grains to people instead. And we could end world hunger, and we could have more clean water available for everyone to have across the world if more people went vegan. Starting out, it is a little bit daunting. It does kind of feel like, what difference could I possibly make? Like, I'm just one person. But that's something that I've learned through all this, is that even if it is just a small change, if you keep making little small changes all day, every day, then it adds up to a big change. And if more people would see that and just make more of those small little choices, then it would definitely snowball into a much bigger effect that really would make a big difference. And I'm seeing it with my own eyes. I started, it was a struggle, it was an uphill climb to start that, but I just kept going and kept making little choices, and I would say, okay, for this meal, I'm going to do this. This time I'm going to do this. And little by little, and then I gained traction and got some followers along the way. And family and friends and other people I know have started making those little changes too, and they ask me for advice. And I think that was the big turning point, where I was like, this is making a difference. Whenever other people approach me and they're like, hey, do you have any good vegan recipes? I'm really trying to move more towards that. And I try to like not have too big of a reaction and be like, oh my god, yes. And I'd be like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's really proved to me that it is making a big difference. And you can inspire people, and that just, it's going to snowball into a really big impact. I grew up in a very rural place out in the middle of nowhere when I was very young. And I didn't even hear the term vegetarian until I was, well, I guess I was a kid. I heard it in a cartoon once, but I didn't know what that meant. And I was just like, I kind of had an idea because it was a Looney Tunes cartoon. I think it was about Elmer Fudd. And the plot twist at the end was he was like, oh, I'm a vegetarian. I only hunt for sport. And I just remember being like, huh? Like, does that mean that he doesn't eat the animal? And it was like I mean, I was just a kid, so it wasn't like I didn't make a strong connection, let alone vegan. Like, that just wasn't even a word back then where I grew up. And yeah, I didn't even meet a vegetarian until we moved to the Austin area and I started middle school. And then I met my first vegetarian, and she was bisexual, and she was like in all the advanced classes, and she was so cool. And I was like, she's so cool, I want to be just like her. And then she kind of started telling me a little bit about the meat industry and a little bit about the dairy industry too. And I was like, you can do that? It was such a mind-blowing moment for me. I was like, you can just not eat animals? I didn't know you could do that. That's so cool. And so I was like, I'm doing that. I just jumped right in, and I just stopped eating meat right then and there and never went back. Like, other non-vegetarians, even people would be asking me about me being vegetarian, and they would say, do you have any intention of ever going vegan? Or they would ask me questions like, well, what's the difference between that? Or they would say, do you also not eat dairy and eggs and stuff? And and I would always say, I would get really like bent out of shape and be like, no way, like that's so extreme. Because I would, in addition to that, I would also hear people bad mouthing vegans, even though I'd never met one. I would only hear bad things. People would say, oh, vegans are so extreme, they're crazy, you know, they're just they're too much, and they're self-righteous. And so I would hear that, and me being a vegetarian at the time, I'd be like, oh, well, at least I'm not that. I'm like, I'm still accepted because I'm not that far gone. And so those are the things I would hear. And so when people would ask me about being a vegetarian, and asking if I ever thought about going vegan, and I would be like, oh, no, they're crazy, they're extreme. I'm not like that. I'm one of you guys. Because I really desperately wanted to still be approachable, and I still desperately wanted to not be alienated from other people, because I think I still wanted people to like to think, oh, vegetarians can be cool. Like, they're not, you know, they're not too out there. When I met my first vegan, it was a really strange moment. I was out in Krause Springs. I was in the water, just kind of floating around, and then I saw this girl who had the heart logo with the V in it. She had that tattooed on her shoulder.
It's like a whale sighting, but what?
Yeah, it was super crazy. So I'm over there floating next to this girl, and she had like dreads, and she had other tattoos, and like she looked so cool. And I was like, hey, what does that V mean? Does that mean that you're like a vegetarian or something? And she was like, oh, it's a vegan symbol. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And like we talked about it a little bit, and I was like, yeah, well, you know, I'm a vegetarian, but you know, I can't get away from cheese. And she was like, oh yeah, I understand that. That's cool. And she was like, you know, just do what's right for you. And I was like, vegans are so cool. I'd never met one until that point, and I was like, they're not stuck up, they're not self-righteous, they're not extreme. She was the chillest person that I'd ever met. And I think that kind of planted the seed for me when I found myself in small town Texas. Yeah, I feel like an outsider. I feel like I don't belong, for sure. That is hard. That is hard when you don't have an immediate support group, and you know, like friends and family who aren't doing it with you. That is really difficult. But that's how I got started too. There are lots of vegans in Austin, but I didn't know any when I got started with it. It was something that I wanted to do. You know, when I learned more about it, and I learned that I was being a hypocrite. You know, I was a vegetarian and I wanted to save animals, but I was still causing them to die by continuing to eat dairy and eggs. And so when I learned about all that, made that connection, and I realized I have to be vegan to stop being a hypocrite and to live my life by my own moral code. And I knew that that's what I needed to do, but I had no idea how to do it. It felt so overwhelming. It felt insurmountable. I was like, how? How am I ever going to get to that point? I just can't imagine my life without cheese. Yeah, I just kind of did it all myself. Well, first it started with the determination. That was the first step. Like, I have to do this. I want to do this. I'm going to do this. How? And so I just did what I always do when I need to learn about a big new thing. Yeah, I just started researching it. I got online, and I just got, you know, I used all the resources that I could. I started joining a bunch of vegan groups online, and that led into vegan meetups in real life, and that was the next step. I thought to myself, I gotta get some vegan friends. I gotta get to know some people and surround myself by that. And like, if I just throw myself into that, then the rest will come naturally, and it'll be a lot easier to be a vegan if I say that I'm vegan. If I just start saying it, and it'll become true. And that's another way that I started. I just started calling myself a vegan. I started saying, I am a vegan now. I'm a vegan, and I started introducing myself that way to people. And it felt weird at first, like it didn't feel natural, but it became so. It became that way after a while. And meeting actual vegans in real life, that definitely helped. I started going to those meetups and started surrounding myself with cool people and made friends with a lot of vegans, and that is really where it took off from there. It was a lot easier knowing that I had support from these people that now became my friends. It's me, and according to the Vegan Society, veganism is all about reducing harm in the best way possible, to the best of your ability, reducing harm done to animals. So it's a morality issue for sure. It's a lifestyle based in the moral belief that we don't need to use animals for anything, and we should just let them be. The plant-based diet is just that. It's the diet. It's mostly or all plant-based foods, and morality doesn't necessarily factor into it. I always research those things online first and find a good master list of brands, either that are always going to be vegan and cruelty free, or at least that clearly market on their products. It's a lot easier to look that stuff up online and either buy online or go find those products in stores. A lot of times these days it seems like things that are meant to look like leather are not. They're usually, especially if they're inexpensive things, you can look at the tag and say, oh, it's polyurethane, this is fine. You just have to know what to look for and just know that it says man-made and know what certain words mean because they do try to hide stuff sometimes.
Do you have any vegan tattoos?
I do. I have a couple, yeah.
Are tattoos vegan?
They can be. Again, you just have to do your research, and I only go to vegan tattoo artists, so they do all that research for me, and I trust them, to go through the whole process and like know that everything that they use is a vegan alternative, because there were things that I didn't know, like the transfer paper could not be vegan, could be animal derived somehow. Some of the inks, like certain inks can be animal derived or bug derived, which is just as gross. I didn't know that. That's not something I thought about until I made the switch. That was also kind of an aha moment where I was like, there's a lot that you have to think about. Like, they sneak animals into everything. It's second nature to me now. It's not hard anymore. But in the beginning, it was pretty daunting because it felt like animals were in everything. Every ingredients list that you look at, every tag, it just seemed like animals. Like, you couldn't get away from it. Once you know what to look for, it's easy to avoid. It gets easier the more you do it. The only relapses that I had when I was in that transitioning phase was dairy. I had such a tough time with that addiction. It really is actually addictive, and I didn't know that before until after I started researching veganism, and I learned that dairy is actually literally addictive. It has that same response on the brain that certain drugs do. Like, it actually, you do get addicted to it. I never felt sick. I never had any like feeling weak moments because I still ate plenty of food, still ate plenty of calories, and I still ate lots of carbs and things. But it was really more of just an intense craving, and just like overwhelming to a point though where it was like I felt like a drug addict, where I was like, I just gotta have just a little bit. Like, I just need a taste to get me through, and then I'm good. I'll be good. And
it's those casomorphins.
A lot of it was a nostalgia thing, and that was definitely an issue for me too, where I was looking at it as a negative. I was looking at, I'll never be able to have, this kind of pizza ever again. And I would focus on that, like, I will never have this again. I can never have hot fries again. And I would get so like torn up about it, and I would be like, I can't do this. And I'd be like, there's no way that I'll ever be able to stop eating these types of foods. And it really felt that way, but I wanted to try. I thought I have to at least try. Like, this is absolutely ridiculous that I'm putting my taste buds over somebody's life. That's so selfish, and that's absolutely ridiculous. There's got to be something out there that tastes kind of the same. And so I just tried. I tried every kind of vegan cheese there was, every kind of vegan pizza that I came across, making my own stuff. And I just tried anything and everything I could until I found some things that I really liked, things that filled that hole, that dairy hole. It started with the cheese substitutes first, and then I started getting into making my own cheeses with like cashew based or like tofu based or what have you. And those were really surprisingly good. You know, things that I had never tried before. I never would have tried that, but I was on a quest to try to find something that tasted as good as cheese. And so I was willing to try anything. And I did find lots of things, and I ended up expanding my horizons a lot more and finding way healthier alternatives. Because now I'm eating, you know, cashew-based cheese or like butternut squash-based, you know, cheese sauces and things like that. You know, I made a queso dip from sweet potatoes and carrots, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. And compare that to, you know, cholesterol, fat laden cow secretions.
Right.
Like, there's no comparison. Like, it's way, way more healthier. I feel great. I never have those issues that you know, used to happen before, and that other people talk about all the time, where like you just feel weighed down and bloated and gross. That never happens. I never really had weight problems, but I did. I was, well, I considered myself one of those people that struggled with the whole skinny fat issue, where you're not a big person, but you definitely have like a layer of fluff on you that just won't go away. And that went away after going vegan. I wasn't trying to do that because I didn't care. I never really cared about my weight. But that was just another bonus that I wasn't looking for, but I got it. I made myself look at those horrible images and those terrifying videos. Definitely made myself watch a lot of those to begin with. Made myself watch documentaries, and I made myself watch Earthlings, which was nightmare fuel. Just horrific. And you know, it's kind of funny because I'm a horror movie fan. I love gory movies. That doesn't bother me one bit. Watching Earthlings, I was sobbing uncontrollably. I had to fight the urge not to run to the bathroom and go throw up. It was really traumatic. It was really, really bad. I made myself watch it because I told myself, if it's not good enough for my eyes, why would it be good enough for the rest of my body? Like, why would I ingest it if I can't even look at it? That's not okay. I'm a slacktivist, I would say. I would love to be more active and actually like get out there and do stuff, but I've always been a very introverted, shy person. I support those people for sure. Those people that are brave enough to go do those things that I'm just too shy to do. I don't try to change people. But I do help them when they ask for help. Whenever I see that there's a little bit of an interest, I'll kind of go with that and just talk to people and try to get them to see other sides of it. And I don't push it on people. I don't ever, you know, because I don't want to be that preachy vegan, and I don't, those imaginary vegans that I'd always heard of when I was younger that are so self-righteous and so like in your face about it. I don't want to be that person. That's my method, is I just like to try to talk to people and get them to think about their choices and think about alternatives, and to get them to see that there is an alternative. To me, it's just it's really about the whole world. It's about the world that we live in. It's about taking care of the world that we live in and all of its inhabitants, the humans that live here, all the animals that live here, and the planet itself. And it's about trying to be as gentle to the planet as you can be, and to take as little as you can from the earth. I follow a lot of organizations, the Mercy for Animals and Compassion Over Killing. I follow their pages, and Veg News magazine. They come out with a bunch of interesting new articles, so that's kind of where I get my news from. I don't think I've ever watched any of those videos because I don't like to give them views. But I see the clickbait titles on YouTube all the time, and I hear about, you know, certain celebrities or this person or that person, Steve-O, denouncing their veganism. They're like, oh, I'm no longer vegan. And I roll my eyes internally and I'm like, you were never vegan in the first place. You don't just stop having a moral compass. I mean, I would hope that you don't. I would hope you don't just abandon your morals suddenly, because that's what veganism is. It's a moral philosophy. So someone who might say, oh, I'm not a vegan anymore. I've met people in real life that say, oh, I used to be vegan. I was vegan for a while and then I stopped. No.
When did you stop caring?
Yeah, you were
What
never
happened
vegan.
to you?
Yeah, you were never vegan.
Right.
How can you just stop caring? And how can you suddenly say, okay, to murder of innocent victims? You were never vegan in the first place. You were a plant-based eater. If you want to stop doing that, then like that's fine, I guess, because that's your diet. But don't try to claim that you used to be vegan, that you used to stand for something and now you don't anymore. That is tough because I mean, the person has to want to change, and that's the hardest part about it, is getting people to care, I think. And maybe you just have to find the thing that they care about the most. Do they care about their health the most? If that's the case, you can point out all of the facts that are out there about the health benefits of it and how it can prevent and reverse those kinds of diseases. Maybe that's not the thing they care about the most. Maybe they do care about animals, and maybe they do care about global warming. It's about finding the thing that they care about the most. Or if they care about all of the issues, then just point out how veganism solves those things. And maybe one of those things will get through to them. And you don't know which part of it is going to get through to them, so maybe try all of them, maybe not all at once. I don't talk a ton about veganism, but it is mentioned on my my hair Instagram, Dani the Hair Slayer. I do have that probably on the bio. I say I'm a vegan hairstylist in Austin, Texas. Cruelty-free beauty, cruelty-free hair, cruelty-free hair color. I put it out there and in the hopes of not only reaching new vegan clients, but also people that are otherwise just looking at my hair page and then seeing that, and then that might get them to start thinking and think, what would not be vegan about hair products and hair color? And then why is that important? Why would she say that? And then maybe that'll get people thinking.
You've been awesome. You did a beautiful job and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to be interviewed, please visit the Vegan Agenda on Facebook. Look for the flying pigs.
We will be featuring more interesting and inspiring vegans, so be sure to like, subscribe, and click that bell for notifications. If you want to help us promote veganism, please support the Vegan Agenda on Patreon.
We would love to hear from you. Please comment below to let us know your thoughts.
Thanks for watching.
Slasher flick, slasher flick, slasher flick.